it really starts and ends with culture. And I know everybody says that, but it really is. We just want this to be a once in a professional lifetime experience for the employees that work here. And we're never going to accomplish that 100%, but that is sure my goal. My goal is 100%.
Welcome to Grow Think Tank. This is the one and only place where you will get insight from the founders and the CEOs of the fastest growing privately held companies. I am the host. My name is Gene Hammett. I help leaders and their teams navigate the defining moments of their growth. Are you ready to grow? Hiring great people, you know that's a critical function of the business. And you probably do a pretty good job of that, hiring people and developing them along the way. But I want you to think about this for a second. Do you believe in hiring A players, the top of the top? Are you willing to let go of all the ones that are B players and C players? I know you probably have some certain thoughts around this, but I really wanted to find the heart of this issue. So I was going out there and talking to my network, and I found Ben Wright. I've had Ben Wright on the show before. Ben has a very interesting concept of hiring people. Ben is the founder and CEO of Velocity Global. They're number 4 on the Inc. 2018 list. They grew at 39,817% over a 3-year run rate. How is that possible? Well, they only had a few 100,000 that first year, and then they grew to about 49 million in 3 years. So really amazing growth. And he says that one of the core factors of that is that he only hires 10s. And so today we're going to uncover not only why he only hires 10s and what that means to the business, what that means internally inside the teams, and the communication and the way work is done, but also the 5 steps that he takes around doing that. So make sure you tune in today because Ben is going to uncover this. I'm going to pull it out of him just for you so that you can grow your company. Thanks for tuning in here to Grow Think Tank. Really excited about sharing this with you. And before you run, I have done so many interviews over the last few weeks. I have such an exciting time to share with you that those interviews have been organized into the 12 core principles of fast growth companies. So all you have to do to get that is go to genehammett.com/worksheet. And so you can get the 12 principles, and I've been able to go in there and find which episodes will align to each individual episode. When you subscribe to Grow Think Tank, you will find exactly what you need so that you can move forward. And many of them haven't been published yet, depending on when you're hearing this, but you can tune in to the date that means the most to you. Now here's the interview with Ben Wright. Hi, Ben. How are you?
I'm doing great. Gene, about yourself?
Well, I am fantastic. I'm excited. This is the first in the new brand of this, and really is something I have been thinking about for a long time and planning.
It's awesome to be here. You were telling me a little bit about the idea and the concept. I absolutely love it. I'm honored to be a part of it. And you already have, soon to be a subscriber. So I'm going to listen.
First time entrepreneur, and I'm going to let you share some details, but just so you don't have to brag on yourself too much. Last year you made the Inc. 500 list, but you were at number 4. Which is super impressive. It is a little bit of a mastery of numbers, right? 3 years ago, your revenue was not very much, and now it's a lot. And you're growing again. You're gonna make the list again in 2019. So tell us, Ben, a little bit about Velocity Global.
Yeah, happy to. So we really found a niche, and it's a niche, but it's a niche that's really applicable to a lot of companies. When an organization wants to go global, and particularly around employment, if you've got people that you want to hire in countries outside of your home country, wherever that happens to be, we think that when you're entering a country's small headcount, setting up a legal entity or a company just to employ those people is a really complex, difficult, expensive way to go about it. And so you can almost kind of think of us as the WeWork of international expansion, or the Airbnb of international expansion. We have companies in 186 countries around the world. And so you just give us a call and you say, hey, Ben, hey, Velocity Global, I've got this gal, I want to hire her. She's in Greece. We don't have a company in Greece. We will employ her to our company so that you don't have to go set up your own company.
That's pretty fantastic. So I'm assuming they get benefits just like they would if they were at the home company?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So the price of admission is to work with us is you just have to have an international employee. And that's why companies tend to engage us. But what you get is, a compliant payroll for that individual in Greece or wherever else it happens to be. All the benefits that come along with employment, like health, pension, all those sort of things. If it's a foreign national, we'll help you make sure they get the visa so they are allowed to work in that country. And then, again, everything that really revolves around employment.
Is it a percentage of salary, or are there flat fees, or I don't know what the business model behind that is?
Yeah, great question. Yes, so it's a percentage of compensation, or if it's a more modest compensation, there is a kind of a minimum fee in order for us to be able to provide the service. But it's a month-to-month contract, and so it is intended to move incredibly fast, hence the name Velocity Global, and it's also intended to keep up with really kind of the whole definition of it, which is you don't exactly know how your strategy is going to work in that country, if this new employee is going to work out. And so it gives you an incredible flexibility.
Now, I know you bring a lot of experience of running and hiring a company, because you've had this idea a few years ago and you went out on your own. When did you start Velocity Global?
April 7th, 2014. So we just celebrated 5 years.
So 5 years ago, when did you hire your first employee?
April 1st, 2015.
All right. So just
I know the date perfectly.
Just under a year. And since then, you've hired how many dozens of employees?
Oh my goodness. Today, this very day, we have 125 internal employees. We're currently supporting thousands of employees across the globe. But our own internal Velocity Global people, we have 125. 85 of those are in our headquarters in Denver, Colorado, and the rest are spread literally across the globe. I mean, we have our own offices, physical offices in about a dozen countries.
I talked to a lot of fast-growing companies just like you. You've been on the Leaders in the Trenches podcast before, and we talked about retention rate. I don't need exact numbers, but I would imagine your retention rate is very healthy.
It is. It's absolutely fantastic. It's actually a really interesting point. I was reflecting on this just yesterday. I was actually asked to come speak at a conference in Montreal last fall around culture. But one of the really interesting things about us is, at that point, I think we'd had like a 1% turnover rate since the beginning of time here at the organization. Ironically, and a true tip of the hat to hubris, I think the next week I came back and someone resigned. So that's life. But, we're still hovering around, 5% or less in terms of kind of voluntary turnover.
That's very impressive. The Inc. 5000 are really blessed, I think, with the fact that they don't have a lot of turnover. But and really attributed to the culture and the having a great place to work. And I think a lot of it has to do with, there's a lot of growth opportunities. Like Velocity Global is full of, you're moving fast, and there's a lot of new projects coming on board. Tell us just a little bit about that.
Again, gee, this is so funny. This has literally been front and center in terms of conversations around our halls this week. So, for us, it really starts and ends with culture. And I know everybody says that, but it really is. We just want this to be a once in a professional lifetime experience for the employees that work here. And we're never going to accomplish that 100%, but that is sure my goal. My goal is 100%. And so that's a big piece of it. But one of the things that we've been talking about is, we've started having a little more voluntary turnover, and we've been kind of taking a look at that and, what's going on? And there's a piece of it, and every situation is unique, but there's a piece of it of when you're a 5-person company, a 20-person company, a 50-person company, and you're on that rocket ship growth like we are, it is very easy to see for everybody. Like, I know exactly what my career path kind of looks like. I don't know exactly where it's going to fit, but I've just got all these incredible opportunities. When you get to be 125 employees, it's not always necessarily all that visible when you're in the trenches, right? From my perspective, my vantage point, I want to tell people all the time, just trust me, right? I mean, we're at 125 employees today. We're going to be in the hundreds, if not 1,000, right, in the next kind of 4 to 5 years. There are endless opportunities, but it gets a little harder to see, again, when you're in the trenches as you start to grow.
Now, I know one of the key factors, there's a number of key factors of retention, but one of them is hiring. And so you've got some special kind of ways of hiring. I remember talking to you. I'd love to figure out, what do you think is really unique about your hiring process that others could learn from?
So we go through a 5-step process in terms of bringing people on board. And it starts with, and I think you and I may have talked about this a little bit, Gene, but it's really funny, this actually shows up in a couple instances on our Glassdoor reviews. The very first engagement you have with Velocity Global, outside of, an email exchange and setting up that first call, is a first call, 30-minute phone screen, and we actually never address your experience or your resume. And there's been a few people on Glassdoor who have knocked us on that and said, these guys don't even know they didn't even ask about my experience. They don't know anything about me. And it's kind of funny because that's actually by design. Like, we really just want to get to know the individual. We want to know what gets them, what makes them tick, what makes them get out of bed in the morning, what really makes them an amazing person. From there, we go into the second phase, which is actually a real deep dive into your experience. And by experience, I mean, we literally go job by job through your resume. But what we don't necessarily focus on is the actual job that you do or have done in your past. We're focused much more on what made you passionate, right? What did you learn? What were the amazing times? And what are the things that you're most proud of? Conversely, what are the things when you really struggled and you really failed? And that's, tell me what you learned from that, right? And tell me how that made you a better person and a better professional as you went on. We've found that hiring people and hiring for culture has been the greatest asset in terms of being able to follow our mantra, which is we only hire 10s around here.
Let me break in for a moment here. Ben talked about really understanding the mistakes that someone has made in that interviewing process. One of the questions I love to ask people, and when I work with my leaders, I share this question all the time, is tell me about a goal that you didn't hit and why you didn't hit it. You want to see what the goal was. That's sort of interesting about who that person is and what they're striving toward. But the real interesting part is why they didn't hit it. If they are immediately tossing out excuses, they're blaming someone else, then they're probably not going to take responsibility or full ownership of the work when they actually work for you. So you want to look for the person who understands that missing of the goal was their responsibility. It was their right, their ownership. And when you can uncover that inside the interview process, you really have something sharp that you can understand who that person is at a deeper level. Now back to Ben. Well, that's a pretty strong mantra. Where did you get it from?
I wish I had a really eloquent answer for you. I think it just goes back to, I just like working with 10s. Is all there really is to it. I've been involved in a lot of organizations over my career, and I've had a lot of experiences where, people just may not be 10s and they can't keep up. But I've had a lot of experiences where people are absolutely 10s. I mean, and we've had this experience where people, no doubt in my mind, they're 10s. But it turns out kind of once they get into the system, once they get into the environment, once they get in the company, they struggle to be a 10 in that environment. And so, again, going back to really getting to know the person, yeah, I mean, we of course love that you've had incredible success. We don't care as much about what specifically you've done. We want to make sure that you're a 10 and that you're a 10 that can shine in our system.
So you talked about the values of people. Do you guys have a set values that you interview to?
We absolutely do. And I'm incredibly proud. We just did an employee engagement survey, and on a 5-point scale average, I think 4.7 out of 5 people said, I absolutely know our values. So that's pretty cool. So we not just have values, everybody knows what they are. And there's 5. It's velocity. So we move with incredible velocity around here. Integrity. Again, we operate with the highest level of integrity. Professionalism. So we treat one another and the entire outside world with the highest level of professionalism. Empowerment, which is a two-way street, Gene, right? Which is you not only need to really empower people so that they can grow and become the best professionals they can, but as professionals, we need to be empowered. And then finally, service. And when we talk about service, it's being of service. So it's really getting out of your own self and finding ways where you can really make someone's day brighter in whatever way that happens to be.
How did the values fit into the hiring process? I know some people ask specific questions. You mentioned there was 5 steps. I think we only went through the first 2, but how does that fit in?
So we have a set questions that we ask every single interview. Now, you have to pause often along the way and then dig deep, if you hear something that you really want to get more information on. But we have a structure, and those are designed around those values. And we'll typically go through, in not the first round, but in the second round, we'll actually go through and we'll pick a value and we'll ask a question about that value related to that job. I remember I mentioned we go, job by job by job on your resume. And so we'll say, give me an example of when you worked for ABC company that you operated with velocity.
Let's dive deeper on this for a second. You might be asking yourself, why is Ben talking about the values inside the interview process? Well, very simply, he hires for culture fit. He said that, and I just wanted to highlight here for a second. He's also really understanding the importance of values inside the company. So they've got a few questions that have aligned to where they can uncover what the values are of that person to see if there is alignment. And so I recommend that you have these questions set aside and talk about exactly the values that you have and come up with 2, 3, 4 questions that will allow everyone that's interviewing them to create their own version of them, but to create a framework so that you can determine, do they make decisions autonomously? Do they have fun when they work? All of the values that are important to you should be a part of that interview process. Now back to Ben. When you are doing this, I guess you're not the one doing this interview because it's probably going through a series of people or hiring managers before it gets to you. Are you still interviewing people when you have 125 employees?
I had an interview just 2 hours ago, as a matter of fact. Yep, okay. Had an interview. So one of the things that I had to let go of pretty early was trying to myself interview every single person that walked in the door. And it was a pause and reflect on our empowerment value, right? It's give people the tools, which is our structure. We train them, every single person we train up before they ever first open a job rec. And we make sure they understand kind of our process, but it's empower our people to bring, incredible people on board. Being able to let go of that really freed up a lot of my time, obviously. It also helps that our team has done an unbelievable job about bringing 10s on. And so it helps me sleep well at night.
I was reading something by Reid Hoffman, who is one of the co-founders of LinkedIn, and he mentioned the importance of the first 150 hires of a company being the foundation of the culture. And that starts earlier, but they interviewed every employee up to about 150.
Yeah. I know. I've read many books. I've heard a lot of people, talk about those sort of things, and I get it. I suppose in the back of my mind, I always think, wow, what a control freak. But I don't mean that disparagingly. It's, I just, once I was reasonably assured that our team was bringing on just as good of a talent and they had just as a good sniffer about, who the right 10s are to bring into our organization, there wasn't a need for me to be involved.
Well, what mistakes have you made in this journey of hiring only 10s?
Giving too much credit to experience and not enough credit to culture. No question. I think of a few who, I'll reiterate, I am utterly convinced they are 10s. There's just no question in my mind. They just ended up not being 10s in our system. And we put way too much value on, title, experience, this, that, and the other. So that's number one. Number two, and we actually didn't talk about this earlier, but I think this is actually a somewhat unique thing that we do as well. For most roles, if not all roles that we bring on here at Velocity Global, one of the very last steps in the process is we ask you to do a homework assignment. And we come up with a hypothetical situation and we ask people to do that homework assignment. We've had some people back out because they don't want to do a homework assignment. Thank God, because we thought we wanted to move forward with them. And if you're not willing to do a quick homework assignment, right, you're not going to be a good fit. That has done an incredible job. Before that time, we were really good about bringing people on. But what I've seen is since we've actually implemented that as a process, we've checked all the boxes from a culture perspective. We've checked the boxes. You've got great experience. Then it's a real life application. You may not really understand what we do, but it gives us a sense of how your brain works in a real life application kind of way. So that's been a really important one.
I am curious, is that homework assignment different depending on your role, or is it something you give to everyone?
No, absolutely. Absolutely. So if you're applying for a sales role at Velocity Global, it's here's the situation, here's the company, come up with the pitch, understand kind of what, why they're doing. I don't want to give away all the secrets here, but that's it. But if you're more on the client service side, right, we'll ask you a question that's really kind of germane to our business. And we fully expect you're not going to have all the answers. You never spent a day in our organization. And this is a new industry. So you can't really go talk to people who have done this before. So it's really cool because it gives you a chance to, see where they go do their research and whether they have the intellectual courage to take that leap, right? I actually don't really know the answer to this question, but you know what? I'm going to go research it. I'm going to go do my very best, and I'm just going to present it, and let's hope for the best. And, the people who are willing to really take that intellectual leap are typically very good fits here.
I could see how that's an uncomfortable kind of thing. Like you go home from an interview going, one more thing. We got a homework assignment for you. Here's what it is. By the way, it's due tomorrow at noon. And you're like, what? But I could see the value, like because part of my job as a coach is to look beyond the words, right? The way someone handles that, or the way they think through this solution,
no question.
I've got to tell you a lot about that person.
Yeah, no question. You always hear that story. I was a long-time sales guy, so you always hear that story of you walk in for an interview, and towards the end, the hiring manager says, "Okay, sell me this pen," right?
Yeah.
And while I think that's good, one of the things that we'll look for in people is a high level of intelligence, but more importantly, how quickly can you assimilate information? And so if you make them actually get out of their comfort zone and go through that intellectual exercise, you really get a sense of how intellectually curious they are and how quickly they can assimilate information, even if it's something they know very little about.
Well, Ben, it's been a pleasure to talk to you here. I want to part with one question. You're talking to another Inc. 5,000 leader or 500 leader, and you're sharing with them the biggest thing that you've learned in the last 3 years of your massive journey. What would you tell them?
What I would tell them is, I don't care where you are on this journey. It's hard work, right? And we love to read the articles, and we love to see the podcast, and we put the people up here, and we focus so much on all the amazing things that happen. Sometimes by design, sometimes because we're just lucky. But nobody's really writing about all the hard yards that have to happen in between. I was meeting with, it was one of our clients, unbelievable tech company. They're just on a rocket ship growth. Their founder is an amazing, amazing dude. And I sat down and I said, hey, you guys are killing it. And he looked at me and he said, my friends keep telling me that. And I keep wanting to tell him, I wish you'd been in that meeting yesterday, right? I wish you'd been in that meeting. And I looked at him and I said, oh my gosh, like this is the exact same thing that happens to me. I mean, my friends always say, Ben, you guys are killing it. And I want to say, I appreciate that. I never stop and pause to think about it, despite everyone telling me I really should. But it's, the work just never stops and it never ends. And I think if you've got a passion and commitment to just be the very best that you can be, and more importantly, give the very best opportunity to the people who choose to dedicate their time and their passion and their emotions and their skills to your organization. That you always want things to continue to get better and always improve so that your best days are always in front of you. It's hard. It's hard. It's rewarding when you allow yourself to pause and reflect on it, which is pretty rare.
Well, I can attest to it. It's hard. I work on many sides of this. I ran a company that would have been in the top 500 years ago. I didn't have time to apply, so I didn't know to apply back then. But I also know that it's hard watching it, advising companies just like what you're going through. So I really appreciate your time, Ben. Really impressed with what Velocity Global is doing. And I do believe you should take some time to ponder on what you've created and the culture that you've created that allows you to continue this level of growth is something to be proud of.
I appreciate that. I will try to take that advice. One thing that is for sure, I wake up every single morning beyond grateful for the team that I get to work with. I have never in my career worked with a greater group of people, and so that part's easy.
I know that I've kind of goaded you a little bit on my research. I've talked to over 400 Inc. 5000 leaders like yourself. When I asked them, leaders' most important responsibility, is it employee or customer? And you say it's customer, but I actually think you actually behave more like it's employees than you do customers.
I know. I think it's fair. And I think I may have told you, I don't think it's a fair question. I honestly don't think it's an either or, so we can agree to disagree on that one.
I get it. I get that. But I appreciate you being here on the podcast and sharing your insights.
It's really an honor to be here. Thanks so much, Gene.
Wow, what a great interview. I really love having been on the show for a second time, getting to know him, getting to know how he thinks. Hopefully you've enjoyed this conversation. We're going to have many more to come, but just looking back at what Ben talked about, really talking about the 5 steps. If you want to know in detail, I wrote an article about it for Inc. magazine. Just go search my name in Inc. You'll be able to find it. It talks about hiring process. And if you can't find it, just make sure you send me an email. I'll hook you up. Well, hopefully you've enjoyed these interviews and many, many more to come. I'm really excited about sharing with you Grow Think Tank. And it really is something I have felt pulled to do. And it has challenged me in many ways. But I'm so excited to launch this in this new iteration, this new reimagination of the podcast. So thank you for being a listener. Hopefully you'll continue listening. And hopefully you'll share this with someone that you find that will enjoy it. Well, make sure you get the worksheet that I mentioned in the very beginning, where I've organized the 12 core principles of fast growth. Just go to genehammett.com/worksheet. And if you have any questions whatsoever about fast growth, make sure you reach out to me, and I'll talk to you soon. As always, lead with courage, and I'll see you next time.